quadrature, okay, quadrilateral. One minute. Viewing the slides or audio video issues, if anything is there, let me know. Yeah. So in solid elements, we have different shapes. Okay. If you go to linear elements, only brick is recommended, and remaining shapes are not at all recommended. Okay. So this we have shown as a summary, but let us look into why they are not recommended. So in solid elements with the quadratic formulation, that is with the mid-side nodes, all shapes are recommended. Okay. So, and same thing, this is 10 noded tet, it is also recommended because it is having mid-side node and it's a quadratic formulation. Coming to shell elements, only quad elements are recommended for linear. Trias are not at all recommended. For quadratic with mid-side nodes, both are recommended. Same is the case with the plane 42 plane elements, which are related to plane stress, plane strain, and axis symmetric formulation. So these are linear. For linear, only quad is recommended. Tria is not at all recommended. Similarly, for quad elements with quadratic formulation, that is with mid-side nodes, both shapes are recommended. So some of the examples related to line elements. Line elements, again, there will be linear and quadratic. Here also, there is no issues with the recommendations. Both can be used. Both linear and quadratic can be used. There is no issue with that. So this is the summary of our recommendations. Now today's session will discuss more on why they are not recommended, like linear, some of the element shapes in linear formulation, why they are not recommended. Let us look into the formulation of a 1D linear element. So typically displacement fields will be given as ux equals to a0 plus a1x. Okay. So this is a linear element, 1D element. It will be having only two nodes I and j, and it is dependent only one dimension, that is x. So displacement field is given as u of x equals to a0 plus a1x. So when you try to calculate strain, that is differentiating displacement with respect to this x, we get a factor called a1. This is a constant. So strain is constant throughout the element. What does it mean? Suppose if I model a cantilever, so if I model, let us understand, if I model a cantilever, say, with the two elements, element 1, element 2, if it is linear in nature, then actual deflection should be something like so actual deflection should be something curvature in here. But if it is a linear element, so if you take a linear element, so this deflection will be straight line. So the strain throughout this element will be constant here and here. So which is not correct, because there is no dependency when you try to differentiate this displacement field. It is only constant. So for the, so this will have one strain and this will have one strain. So in actual case it is something different, because the strain will vary throughout the element. Okay. So because deflection is varying, so strain will be varying. So this is all like. So let us understand more on this polynomials which is used for element formulation. So this is a typically called Pascal triangle. So this is used for identifying the polynomials for the uh, elements. So the complete two-dimensional polynomials are represented in Pascal triangle as a graphical method. This is how it will be represented. So a complete polynomial of odd n must contain all terms shown above the horizontal line. A complete quadratic polynomial in two dimension must contain 6 terms. Okay. So so this horizontal line, if you see 1xy is a complete polynomial. Similarly, 1xy, x square, xy, y square. So this completes, this is a complete polynomial. So a complete polynomial of order n must contain all terms shown above the horizontal line. These are the horizontal lines. Above the horizontal lines, all the terms should be contained to have a complete polynomial. So for typical example, for two-dimensional, to have a complete quadratic polynomial, it should be like containing one xy, x square, xy, and y square. So this is one example of complete quadratic polynomial. So and also we also can have incomplete polynomials which exhibit geometric isotropic if the incomplete polynomial is symmetric. Okay. So even though if it is incomplete, still we can consider it. Only thing is it should be symmetric. Okay. For example, if you take this factor a0 plus a1x, a2y plus a3xy, this is a completely symmetric in nature. If you see this one 1xy. So this is an incomplete polynomial, but it is symmetric. So this also we can take it as a, these factors can be taken, terms can be taken as a formulation for the elements. So one it should have complete polynomial, or you can have incomplete polynomial which is symmetric. So two things you can consider for the element formulation. One is complete polynomial. Second thing is incomplete polynomial which is symmetric. So time being, we will be talking about linear and quadratic. We cubic and quadratic we are not using. Only linear and quadratic we will be talking in our stress analysis. Now let us look into 2D elements. Okay, so triad displacement field. It's a complete for polynomial 1xy. It is above the solid line. So it is represented by this formula. This polynomial is a1x plus a2y. When you try to get a strain, strain in x and strain in y, they are constants. So this indicates that strain for linear 2D tri-element is constant throughout the element. Even it is a x strain or strain in x direction or strain in y direction, the strain distribution is constant throughout the element. So which is not correct, okay, and it is not a it's not representing actual physics, okay. So that is the reason we are not recommending tria with linear formulation, tria with three nodes we are not at all recommending. Similarly, for quad displacement field, it is represented by 1 x y and x. So this is incomplete polynomial with symmetric. Okay, when you try to differentiate with x and y along with the constants, it is having one more thing is factor with associated with y for strain in x direction. For strain in y direction, constant plus a3 and x direction. So these x and y are depends upon the displacement location of the particular location in the element. Suppose if I take a element here, so strain is given by strain is strain in x directly proportional to y. Strain in y direction is directly proportional to x. So this x is varying along the element phase and y is varying along this phase. So strain is like it's here its strain is not constant and it is varying throughout the location of the element. So there exists a strain gradient in this formulation, and it is more accurate than the tria element. Similarly, in tria displacement, like if you look for mid-side nodes or quadratic formulation, uh, so here tria represents complete polynomial. Okay, so that means it should have one x y, x square, xy, and y square. So this second solid line above terms should be considered for the tria. So because it is having 6 nodes, it should have 6 terms here. So this is how the quadratic formulation looks like for a displacement field. Okay, for tria, this is the quadratic formulation. It respect to when you try to get a strain terms, when you differentiate with respect to x and y, so there exist some gradients. These gradients are depends upon x direction and y direction of the element phase in both x strain in x and strain in y. So this looks to be more accurate than the previous formulation because it is having a better strain gradient because it is depending upon both x direction and y direction. For both strains, it is having dependency on x and y. Okay. So for tria, x and y. Okay. This is linear. This is quadratic. So in linear, it is directly proportional to one term. So in linear, it is dependent on one term for both strains. In quadratic, it is depending upon two terms, x and y. for both the strains. So that makes it is um, more effective element compared to linear elements. So there exists a strain gradient various x and y coordinate, and it is more accurate than tria and quad elements. So this is on tria element with the quadratic formation. So coming to quad element with the quadratic formation, it should have, it is having 8 nodes. Definitely it should have 8 terms here. So when you try to put together, try to identify 8 terms, so all the 6 terms which is relevant to trias will be, we have to take all the 6 terms. Plus we need to take additional so so here this one a 1 xy x square xy y square, then x square y, then xy square. So up to this point we need to take. So so these are the terms we need to consider. So these are the terms we need to consider for the quad element with mid-side nodes. So it will have total 4 terms here. So when you try to differentiate, so when you try to differentiate here with respect to x and y, then it is having another term. So uh, here it is only like simple polynomial in order of 1. But here if you see, like it will have polynomials in 2 terms. Like for example, if you take differentiation with respect to x here, then so when you differentiate displacement with respect to x, then let us see what are the factors will be there. So here a1x, so that will be a1. Then this will be 0. This one will be 2a3x. Okay. Then a4y. Then 0. Here 2a6xy. Okay. So if you see here, uh, it is having a term, second term here, second degree term here. Okay. So that makes it, it is more what I can say is like it is more depend upon these locations. This great stress gradient is more dependent on this stress gradient, and it is a quadratic representation. So it can well fit into the actual strain prediction, actual strain behavior. Okay, actual strain in the model. So So to summarize, so trialinear strains are constant. Quadratic linear strains are directly proportional to for a strain in x direction directly proportional to y, strain in y direction directly proportional to x. Quadratic quadratic strain in x direction is directly proportional to x comma y. Strain in y direction is also directly proportional to x comma y. Coming to quad element with quadratic formation, strain in x direction is directly proportional to x, y, and product of x and y. Okay. Similarly, strain in y direction is directly proportional to x, y, and product of x and y. Okay. So if you see here, it is constant, depend on one of the direction, depends upon both directions, depends upon both the direction, product of the both the directions. So this is completely quadratic. Okay. So remember, strains always in physics, in our component, any component behavior, you won't have any linear behavior. Always it is a quadratic. So, so our strains will vary quadratic. Okay. For example, if you see the displacement, it will vary. It's a quadratic. Similarly, strains are also will vary differently. So it is always these polynomials will fit perfectly to the actual physics other form. So always it is recommended to we can use this formulation, okay, or we can use these three formations. So if you go for quadratic formulation, we'll get better convergence. Okay, to get the same distribution here, it will take lot of elements. We have to put lot of elements in the finite element model so that to get this behavior. Whereas you can put very less number of elements here. So any questions here? So this is very important topic where we need to understand the importance of linear and quadratic. If you have any questions, just let me know. Okay, let us move towards 3D elements. Okay, so similar to 2D, here also Pascal. We in 2D we use Pascal triangle. Here we use Pascal pyramid. Okay, so four noded. Let us start with four noded tetrahedral. So in four noded tetrahedral, it is having four nodes. That means it should have four terms here. So four terms here are 1, x, y, z. So when you try to differentiate this polynomial with respect to x, y, z, so strains are constant. Similar to our tria element, strains are constant, and which is not a correct behavior of the element. So coming to 10 ordered tetrahedral, it should have 10 terms here. Okay. So what exactly these 10 terms we need to understand here. Okay. So 1 x y z. Okay. Then x square, y square, z square. Okay. That completes 7. Then x y, x z, and y. Okay. So this is a complete polynomial representing 10 ordered tetrahedral element. So when you try to differentiate with respect to x, we will get a one term a1 here, then a4, 2a4x, then a7y, then a9z. So there exists a strain gradient here, and this strain varies along x direction, y direction, and z direction. Okay, so So tet 400 is constant. Tet 400 is constant. Strains are constant. So tet 10 noded um, directly proportional to x, y, and z. So directly proportional to x, y, z. Okay. Similarly, for 8 noded hexagonal element, we should have 8 terms. So what are those 8 terms? So first 4 we are good, right? So we need to identify other 4 terms which make it a incomplete polynomial and symmetric in nature. Okay, that is xy, yz, and xz. Okay, and then we need to make this one xyz. So all these 4 terms, then xz, xy, yz. So that will complete 7 terms, and the 8th term will be xyz. So this will complete an incomplete polynomial with symmetric behavior. Okay. So coming to let us understand what are the dependencies in the strain gradient. So there exists a strain gradient here. This is easily understood. What the 8 node. Let us understand what are the dependencies here. So when you try to differentiate with respect to x here, so there exists a constant a1, then a. This is 0. This is 0. Then y, then z, then yz. So that means for x it is y, then z, then yz, product of y and z. Okay. Similarly, for y, it should be x, it should be z, then xz. Similarly, for z, it is uh, x, y, x comma y. Okay. If you see here, it is depending upon y, z, and y comma z. So apart from there is no x terms coming here in x for strain in x direction. There is no y term coming in here strain in y direction. There is no z term in strain in z direction. So just I want to give a some. So I want to you people to work on 20 node. Okay. What 20 node, what are the dependencies? Just you guys work on this as an example problem and try to solve this one. Okay, what are the dependencies for 20 noded quad? So you have 4 node tech, 10 node tech. Okay, this is linear, this is quadratic, this is linear, and you have to work on quad 20 noded quadrilateral element. Okay, so from this pyramid try to get, okay, what are the dependencies for the quad 20 noded. So this is the reason why we are not recommending linear elements for particular shapes. Let us look into these things. Okay, let us look into the summary. So brick, so it is recommended, 8 noded recommended, tech 4 noded it is not recommended. The reason, all strains are constant. Okay, similarly prism we will be having same issues similar to tech, and pyramid also will have same issues. Okay, maybe you can work it out. Okay, you can look into it and try to work it out what are the deposited with it. So coming to quadrilateral, so that is tech is there, brick is there, prism and pyramid, everything is recommended because of their dependencies on location. Okay, so geometry element geometry location, so it is depending upon x y z. So all these four formations are depends upon the locations, that's why they are recommended. Quadrilateral are very much recommended. So same is the case with the tet, it is recommended. Coming to shell elements or plane elements, so as we discussed earlier, quad is recommended and tria is not at all recommended. Again, same is the case because of uniform strain in the element. And for quadratic formulation, both the shapes are recommended. Same is the case with the solid 2D element. Linear trias are not at all recommended. Remaining things, linear quad, quadratic quad, and quadratic trias are recommended. Okay. So hope I cleared gave more information on linear versus quadratic. I hope it cleared your doubts why some of the linear element shapes are not recommended, and those shapes we can use only for quadratic formation. It should clear your doubts. Any questions I am ready to take. Otherwise, we can jump into element quality. So let us start. If you have any questions, you can ask end of the session also. Let us start with element quality. So all continuum elements, 2D, 3D, and 3D shells or 1D are tested for acceptable shapes. So when you try to measure geometry, so software will put all the elements. Okay, and it is very much required for to check the element shapes. Okay, of course some of the softwares are very intelligent and they won't put any error elements. So there are two things, warning elements and error elements. Okay, so warning elements are elements which deviate the shapes within the limits. Okay, so error elements which crosses the limits are called as error elements. So in our I worked on ANSYS software, especially ANSYS Classic. Again, we have issues with ANSYS Workbench, but in ANSYS Classic, there won't be any error elements. Okay, because software doesn't allow to put error elements, but it will allow to use warning elements. So even then, we need to check the element shapes whether they are acceptable or not, or they are well below the limits or not. So Shape parameters are functions of geometry of the element shape. Element shape parameters are compared to element shape limits. Okay, those parameters, what are the shape parameters, are compared to element shape limits. So definitely we have to check against the limits whether it is within the limits or within, or or it is exceeding above the limits. If it is exceeding above the limits, certainly we need to review it. Okay, whether we can keep it or we need to take it out. Okay, element shape limits are functions of element type and settings. Okay, what type of elements you are using and what type of settings you are using. Suppose if you take plane elements, plane elements are solid 2D elements. Okay, there we need to use different settings, right? One is plane stress with thickness, axisymmetric, plane strain. So those are the settings we'll generally call. So these element shape limits will vary depends upon element type and their settings. When defined, an element may generate no warnings. One or more warnings or element may be rejected with an error. Okay. So when defined, element may generate no warnings. So when you try to measure geometry, so we have three things. One, no warning element. No warning or second one, warning. Third one, error, and no element created. So there are three options. One is no warning or error. That means the generated mesh doesn't contain any warning or error elements. Okay, that is one option. One thing. Second thing, it may contain some warning elements. Warning, it will be some warning message saying that there are some warning elements present. Third one is error. Error means it won't generate any element. Okay, no element created. So most of the softwares it won't create error elements. So some of the element shapes we have listed here. Some of the element shapes we have listed here. So this is very best element quality element. Okay, perfect square, and these shapes are okay, and these are very poor elements. So best, okay, and very poor. And those are related to quad elements. Coming to here, this is related to triad. This is best shape, and these are okay, and this is very poor. So generally, like some of the element shape checkings we perform are aspect ratio, parallel deviation, maximum corner angle. These element shapes generally performed for bricks, wedges, pyramids, and tetrahedral elements. So these above quantities generally performed for each phase of the elements. Like if you take this brick element, it will perform each phase. There will be 6 phases to this brick element. All these 6 phases, it will complete aspect ratio, parallel deviation, maximum corner angle. For this TET, it will calculate for the trias, all the 4 trias. So for some types of 3D solid element distortions are not revealed by examining of phases. So some of the distortions we cannot examine by seeing the faces. Only we can check by checking the cross sections. So, like if you see here, some of the pictures I put together. So in these elements, so we have to check the cross sections of these elements. So these are the some cross sections for the quad and cross sections for the triads and cross sections for the pyramids. So software will check the cross sections of these elements and uh, check these quantities: aspect ratio, parallel deviation, and maximum corner angle. So, and it will check and it will assign to the element which is having a worst value for any case or cross section. So it has to check for, so for 3D, generally for 3D, it will check. So quality, element quality will be checked for faces or cross sections, and it will check the all the faces, all the cross section, and get the worst quality, and it will assign this to the element. This is how element quality will be checked. So some of the things, let us look into aspect ratio. So aspect ratio as a measure, as a shape measure, has been reported in finite element literature for decades. So this is standard quality checking aspect ratio. Okay, this is the best. Okay, 1:1. Okay, and all sides are in same length. So for quadrilateral, squares have an aspect ratio of 1, and aspect ratio increases the more the square is stretched oblong. So if you try to stretch the square, so for 20 it will give warning. So behind 20 it will give error. So aspect ratio is the ratio of a ratio of a longer side to the shorter side of whichever rectangle is more stretched. Okay, so it is basically it's a ratio of longer side to shorter side. So best is 1, warning is 20, error will be more than 20. So for triangles, equilateral triangle have a aspect ratio of 1, and aspect ratio again, it is a ratio of a triangle is computed based on the angles measured at the corner nodes rather than the height and width. So in triads we generally check the angles and then we'll calculate the aspect ratio. So this is the one, aspect ratio is 1 for equilateral triangle, and 20 is the worst warning, and above 20 will be the error element. And this is related to parallel deviation. Parallel deviation is computed and tested for all quadrilaterals and 3D solid elements having quadrilateral faces or cross section. Okay, so this parallel deviation is checked only for quadrilaterals or 3D solid elements which are having quadrilateral faces or cross sections. So so here tetrahedral we cannot measure because it is having all trias. So parallel derivation is computed using following steps. Ignoring mid-side nodes, unit vectors are constructed in 3D space along each element edge, adjusted for consistent direction. Each pair of opposite edges, the dot product of unit vectors is computed. Then the angle whose cosine is the dot product of is the dot. So each pair of opposite edges, the dot product of unit vectors is computed. Then the angle whose cosine is the dot product. So when this 1 and 3 will be they perform dot product, and the angle should be 0. If it is 0, no, dot product is 1, then cosine will be 0 here. So if the dot product is 0.5, then angle should be 60. So elements parallel deviation is 60. So 1 and 3 will have 0, and 2 and 4 will have 60 degrees. So this element will have a parallel deviation of 60 degrees. So 1 and 3 doesn't have any parallel deviation. 2 and 4 it is having parallel deviation of 60 degrees. So some of the examples of parallel deviation, this is the best. There is no parallel deviation for the square or rectangle, and 70 is the warning, and 100 is also warning, and above 100 will be error. Okay, 150 or 170, it will be the error. So maximum corner angle, the maximum angle between adjacent edges is computed using corner node position 3D space. Best possible triangle maximum angle for an equilateral triangle is 60. The best possible maximum possible quadrilateral maximum angle for flat rectangle is 90. So these are the ideal things. So for trias it should be 60. For the quadrilateral it should be 90. Okay. So if you see here, maximum corner angle, the best is 60, 165 is warning, okay, and best is 90, warning is 144. This is for quadrilateral, and 180. If you see the 180 node is aligned between two nodes. This is actually quadrilateral, and it has become tria with one node. So this is completely error element. This is not correct. So what we'll do, like next session, we'll talk about Jacobian ratio. So this is very critical to understand what is Jacobian ratio, warping factor. So I'll tell some techniques on meshing as well. So we'll be touching, we'll be looking into these things in next session. So today's session is very critical session because here you understood why linear and difference between more understanding on linear versus quadrilateral, and then we also discussed about element quality. So if you have any questions, just let me know. So Tuesday's session will talk about more on element quality and mesh convergence, and then we need to talk about non-linearity. So any questions, just let me know. I got a response from Venkateshwara College, no doubts. What about other colleges, Kakinada, Vijayanagaram, MVJR College, Vishnu Institute of Technology? So you need not wait for my in this session. You can also write an email in your doubts, lakshman.kasina@sign.com. I can answer your queries in next session. So any questions? MVJR, no doubts. Kakinada, JNTU Vision, JNTU Kakinada, Vishnu Institute of Technology. This one. But other college did not join. No?